Morning, boys. What's going on?
So yesterday we got a lot of stuff to discuss because Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson did a lot of talking. They went all through the podium to Mike Florio to all the networks. So Brad, how surprised were you? Let's start here at how open Ryan Poles was about the possibility of trading DJ Moore, Tyson Bagent, of doing business to pare down his salary cap and to get under the cap so he can have a roster he can live with.
Well, I think he talked about being as flexible as possible and as open-minded as they can possibly be, and they're in a situation where they got to do some heavy lifting cap-wise here in a short period of time. And so if you're willing to throw an idea at them, maybe something they haven't even considered, they'll at least listen. And if they want the possibility of trading DJ to maybe materialize, yeah, I think they've got to push that out there, because they cannot cut DJ Moore and create cap savings. The only way to pull it off is to trade him. And that could be a little tricky, because it's $24.5 million for this year, and if he's under contract on March 13th, which will be the third day of the league year, $15.5 million for 2027 becomes fully guaranteed. So you're talking about then being into him for a minimum of $40 million. He played for a lot of the reasons that Bears fans look at DJ Moore and say, hey, they got to trade him. Fans of other teams might look at it and say, that might not be the best move for the team. And I respect DJ and what he brings to the table. And I think short of getting a solid offer, the Bears are going to be happy to have him on the roster this season, but it just means they're going to have to find other avenues to create some of those cap savings that they're going to require.
Brad, in yesterday's article, you said that the Bears are open for business and the situation is such they might end up parting with more than one player that they'd really like back. Who are some of these players? And please don't say Cole Kmet, because as David knows, I am the leader of the Cole Kmet fan club here in Chicago.
Yeah, really, I don't think that's likely. But they're at a spot where you can't say impossible for most things, but I think they highly value Cole Kmet, and they're not evaluating him through the lens of fantasy football statistics, okay? Or number one or number two. Like Cole's value as a guy who can help you in the pass game, both catching the ball, pass blocking when needed. His value in the run game was extremely high this past season, third-ranked rushing offense in the league. And I think the ability he had to handle some of those things in the run game are what allowed Colston Loveland, in part anyway, to steadily kind of gain and become more effective throughout the entire season. So I would certainly be surprised if Cole Kmet's not on the roster this year, but you almost can't say never to about anyone. I'd say one more thing, Cole. If I had to, rank a list of possible things that could happen with Cole, I think there's a greater possibility at some point, maybe not in the next couple weeks, but at some point they consider an extension for him to lower the cap hit, get him under contract for a couple more years, than unload him. Now, the problem or the challenge for the team with the extension would be he's still going to be in the prime of his career when this contract is complete at the end of next season. So I can't imagine Cole Kmet is looking to hand out some discounted years starting in 2028. But that's conversation for another day.
Brad, they also were pretty open about the Tyson Bagent conversation. Ben Johnson delivered the funniest response of the day when he coughed and said no about trading Tyson Bagent. And yet, if there is a market that emerges and there's more than one team and there are bidders for the backup quarterback who is backing up a starter who hasn't missed a start in 2 seasons, you listen, as they said. What do you suspect the market is for Tyson Bagent? And do you agree with Ben Johnson when he says that he's one of the 32 best quarterbacks in the NFL?
Well, Ben's going to be able to put together a better list of those 32 through his experiences than you and I probably. The Bagent thing's interesting to me. A team's not going to trade for him unless he's going to, at minimum, compete for the starting job, right? At minimum. So I think you have to take a look at the landscape and say, okay, how many teams out there are in the market for a starting quarterback, and go through that. And then you start looking at what are their possibilities? Like, is Bagent going to be anybody's plan A? I'd be a little surprised, right? And I don't even know that someone's going to try to trade for Bagent and just name him the starter. Like, can you imagine if back not too long ago when the Bears are in quarterback limbo and they're going out and trading for the Tyson Bagent of the Houston Texans, who you probably barely heard of, right? Can you imagine what the reaction would be?
No. That's why I was surprised at how open they were about their love for him.
Yeah, I just think if you want to blow them away with an offer, they'll talk. If you're going to offer them a mid-round pick, how does that make the Bears better? Mm-mm. Like what does it do? They took a 4th-round pick and drafted Ruben Hippolyte last year. You need another 4th-round pick this year, or even if it's a 3, because your Case Keenum's a free agent who I think there's a possibility they'd like back, depending on how the cap puzzle comes together and his level of interest. But he's out the door. So if all of a sudden you trade Bagent, now you've got one quarterback under contract, and Caleb's been remarkably durable. Like, he's coming up on the most durable Bears quarterback of all time, and he's entering year 3. But by golly, if something happens to him in week 9 where he's got to miss a month, and you see that happen to quarterbacks all the time, and the Bears hit the skids, they're not going to look too great if Tyson Bagent's in another uniform, whether he's playing or not.
I think we can all agree that defensive line is one of the bigger needs for the Bears, and that's what a lot of the Chicago fans want to talk about. Ryan Poles yesterday didn't sound like a GM ready to make a big D-line splash. He said, from a cap perspective, we probably don't have enough to make all that work on the D-line. And there's some situations, mostly injury, that didn't allow that to come together the way it's supposed to. After hearing from Poles, do you expect them to go into next season with a similar defensive line as they have this year?
No, I think they're going to add to it. I mean, they've got to. And it's a remarkably deep draft for edge rushers. Like, talking to people down here in Indianapolis, there's whatever your prototype is in terms of height, weight, length, things of that nature, you're going to be able to find it. Now, is there a Myles Garrett? No. But it's a deep, deep group with guys coming in all shapes and sizes. So you've got that on the edge. There's it's a solid draft, I think, for interior defensive linemen. And it's not as deep there, but there's some choices, and there might be a cluster of them available there around 25 for the Bears to pick from, if that's kind of how they wanted to start the draft out with an interior defensive lineman. But Yeah, they're hopeful that those injured guys will be in the mix in 2026, but by no means do I expect them to sort of lean into that as the cure-all for what was missing on that defense up front. They know they've got to add some talent and some more depth to that defensive front.
Brad, what do you think that Ryan Poles was referring to specifically, or a position group or a player or players, when he was expressing the need to have more speed on his defense? Was that a problem that you felt like was obvious last year? I think every football coach that I've ever known always wants to get faster at certain positions, but he did make that a point of emphasis, and I wondered what you thought of that.
Yeah, I think, the two position groups that jump out to me just based on you look at the depth chart, because with their cap situation, it's a little difficult to, hey, well, they could upgrade here. Well, yeah, that's a great conversation about upgrading at a certain position, but they've got like blank spaces they have to fill first. So I'm thinking about safety, and I'm thinking about linebacker. I do not expect Tremaine Edmonds to be on the roster next season, and speed is not a question for him. He moves extremely well, especially for a guy with his size at that position. But I think we all know that T.J. Edwards, that's not his strength, right? That's when he's 100% healthy. You're not talking about his speed. You're talking about his instincts, his intelligence, being in the right place at the right time, things of that nature. So they probably want to get a little bit faster in the secondary and at the linebacker position. And I wouldn't disagree with them, although it wasn't didn't seem to me like a glaring problem for them. And then you talk about speed, like Nahshon Wright's plenty fast enough, but he was really tight-hipped, and so he's not a guy that turns and runs real well. But if you look at a 40-yard dash time, he cruises, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think
safety linebacker.
Yeah. I think left tackle is another interesting position for the Bears here. And we got another name that could possibly hit free agency, Trent Williams. I know that would be a huge cap hit. What do you expect the Bears to do at left tackle? Is there someone in free agency? Doesn't look like there's many guys. Rashad Walker from the Packers, Trent Williams, probably a little bit too expensive. Maybe the draft, or do they just go into next season with Theo Benedict and wait for Ozzie Trapillo to get healthy?
Well, I don't think they're going to do the latter there. I don't think that's in the cards. And it was amusing to look at all the people who thought that if Trent Williams somehow becomes available, that's a no-brainer option for the Bears. I mean, shoot, if they could get him and Maxx Crosby, then they'd really be cooking, right?
It wouldn't be bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky spot, I think, Clay, because ultimately they want to give Ozzie a shot there down the road. And is down the road December? Is down the road 2027? I don't know right now, and they don't know. So you sort of need a bridge player to get you there. And if you were looking for a bridge safety, no problem. You want a bridge guard? Plenty available. You want a bridge right tackle? We can probably find you a couple options there. A quality left tackle that you would view as a bridge guy, he's not available. Like that guy, if he's a quality left tackle, he's going to get paid. So I think the bridge option here, really, the one that makes most sense, and they'll have to get together and talk, the two sides, is Braxton Jones. And that's something I've talked about since Mobile a month ago in the Senior Bowl, is this could be a win-win situation for both parties. Braxton Jones did not put together the kind of contract year that he would have hoped for, coming off the injury that he suffered in 2024. So he's sort of damaged goods right now because he was never healthy this past season. So he could use a one-year kind of situation to go out and play, correct his market, enhance his positioning. and the Bears could use a one-year guy to fill that gap for him. The question is, what do the coaches feel about him? I don't know the answer to that, because he was, Dan Rochar never saw him healthy, right? I'm talking fully 100% healthy. Ben Johnson never saw him at his best. They can look at the tape. They can hear testimonials from Ryan Poles and Jeff King and others, but they never saw it. So that'll be interesting to see, because I think, a guy like that, you're probably looking at ballparking it $5 million for a season, maybe, which is would make a lot of sense in my mind.
Brad, before I let you go, I found the answer to a couple different questions. Ryan Poles expressed that this wasn't the sense of urgency wasn't about next year. The big picture approach was to sustain success and to take the approach to roster building so they were good for a while. And that answers the question about, Trent Williams and Maxx Crosby and some of these go-for-it moves they might resist because they're taking the long view, because they can't, because they have Caleb Williams, because they have Ben Johnson. Did that strike you the same way, or how would you describe just that approach that Poles talked about?
Yeah, and I think they kind of dropped some breadcrumbs at the end of the season in that regard, and people just kind of you're going to wait and see, right? Do they want to go for a bigger move or not? Because Ben Johnson, they had tremendous success in year one. He's got a quarterback going into year three. They've got a handful of other young players that performed well, should be getting better. You go out and you make that Crosby move, and you're giving yourself a short window, and then you're going to have some you're going to have to really rectify what's going on with your salary cap in the not too distant future. And then you're in a position where your quarterback is year 6, and you're George McCaskey's got a task force at Hallis Hall going through the chairs and sofas there, trying to find loose change for their salary cap, right? They're going to be in an untenable position. So they've kind of maintained that all along. They want to build something that is going to sustain and put them in position to contend yearly. I know Bears fans love to take swipes at the Packers, but guess what? They've been in the postseason most every year, and that's the first step for the Bears. They got to prove that they can make it to the tournament every January and have the kind of roster and foundation in place to put themselves in a position, and you go swing on that older guy. It didn't make sense to me at the end of the season, and it doesn't make sense now, especially when you look more and more closely at the roster, what it looks like in 26, what you could project ahead to 27 and 28, and then the cap situation.